It is time now for the week that was, when we take a look at the top stories that made the headlines around the globe this week. And we'll begin with the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors. During the week, gave the federal government a 4-week ultimatum over an industrial dispute in order to prevent a national strike. The doctors say this is due to unresolved demands, including the immediate disbursement of the 2026 medical residency, training fund, payment of salary and allowance arrears, and implementation of agreements on welfare and remuneration. NARD called on the coordinating Minister of Health to act before the ultimatum expires quickly to stop in order to maintain industrial harmony. The association says that failure to act could affect healthcare delivery amid existing manpower shortages and migration of doctors abroad. Okay, ladies, the resident doctors are back at, giving warnings, and really, can we blame them, given what everybody is going through in the country? Practically every sector of the economy has one complaint or the other, practical complaint as it affects your sector. We tend to say, of course, that in 3 years, what this administration seems to have gotten right is how to engage with different sectors, particularly the unions there. ASU, for example, people will say, oh, we thank God that ASU hasn't gone on strike in 3 years. Resident doctors too, but of course we have seen in about few weeks, few months that, yes, the issues are still there, but they are willing to engage. So there's another 4-week ultimatum, an extension of what he had before, basically asking the minister and, of course, the federal government in general to say, listen, we've been patient, we've been reasonable, we're willing to engage, but if we don't deal with the issues on the ground, we will be left with no choice but to go on strike. And we know, of course, that when doctors go on strike, it is not like when police officers or when journalists or when anybody else, go on strike. It's going to be devastating. Part of the issues why people think that doctors should be listened to is because we have leaders, many of them, who do not even use local medical facilities. And therefore, the generality of Nigerians who use them are eager to see that the strike does not happen. And what are the issues really? Issues of salaries, issues of allowances, deal with the assault on healthcare personnel, and of course, upgrade the infrastructure. We saw the other time a doctor who sadly died in a lift because the lift in a hospital, didn't quite work well. And those are the things that the doctors have been discussing with the government, and they say deal with it. When it happens, of course, you will see action. But of course, a few months down the line, a few years down the line, we're back discussing the same thing. And doctors are insisting, if you do not deal with it this time around, we'll be left with no choice but to go on strike. That is what.
It's very important when we always contextualize this, we must do so in terms of what does our government prioritize. If our care workers are telling us that there is 19 months of professional allowance arrears, 19 months of that not being released, then we must say that the government is not prioritizing the health and the healthcare of Nigerians. This is also coming after the 2026 budget. The Ministry of Health, their capital expenditure was, I think it was 36 million now. It was it was a paltry sum. It was nearly unbelievable. A lot of people thought it was even possibly made up. But seeing this strike happen, we've seen strikes in 2014, 2017, 2020. Ever since the framework for resident doctors was put into place in the 2001, I believe. Since then, every single government has refused to properly, fully implement it. Both the salary reviews, both the allowances, as you spoke to, and then we now have to talk about the actual welfare of these doctors. That's over 20 years of failed promises from one government to another. At the same time, we're seeing JAPA, we're seeing our doctors flee to better, to better environments where there is structure, where there's salaries, where there's actual proper welfare for healthcare professionals. It is because what we're dealing with now is not whether or not the doctors are going to strike. It's that if you depress an environment so much, you will have a continuous outflow of healthcare professionals, and we're already underserved. It is absolutely frightening, and as you said, a lot of people in the political class do not use these medical facilities. Do not even travel to Dubai or to India or to London for their healthcare, or to France. But what matters mostly is the health and welfare of Nigerian citizens. And if you do not take care of our healthcare workers, this is going to this keeps recurring. Yeah.
Now, just to, put this in further context, we're looking at the fact that this includes non-payment of the 2026 Medical Residency Training Fund, delayed salaries for house officers, arrears of 25% and 35% of the consolidated medical salary structure, just like Adesuwa said, 19-month professional allowance arrears, and unpaid salaries and promotions. These doctors are not asking for freebies or asking for anything that they do not rightly deserve. I think it is incredibly exhausting for us to continue to have these sort of conversations where we are literally asking the government for the barest possible minimum. It is really, really hard to believe that it is so hard to take a look into an industry that literally the lives of Nigerians depend on. Not a lot of Nigerians, and in fact, not many Nigerians can afford to leave the country, like most of our politicians do when they need to seek medical care. Aside from that very, very important fact, we also have a situation where doctors do not even want to be in this country anymore. Now, for me, I'm thinking, what's going to happen in the next couple of years if there's an emergency? Like, is this going to be a situation where, as usual, it will be poorly delivered services, not because there are not, situations around, but because there aren't enough people to handle it. There are more people who need the doctors than the doctors themselves. So I listen to this story, I hear what they're saying, I'm looking at the fact that they're giving the federal government a 4-week ultimatum, and I'm asking myself, what is the federal government thinking? What exactly is the problem? Why is it so hard to understand that health is such an important sector? It's such an important space for Nigerians to live. It's bad enough that we have to live with this fate of insecurity. It's bad enough that we have to live with this fate of inflation, prices increasing every other day. How much more for someone who just wants to give birth in peace, who just wants to be able to have a child and not be treated by a doctor who only just started training, who only just got out of university and does not have sufficient experience, because the majority of the doctors with experience have left the country because of brain drain. It's exhausting for a country who has such talented people, for a country who is doing magnificent things globally. It is completely disheartening to know that we, the people in the country, have to suffer this menace.
All right, let's move on with the next story.
Yes, so the next story is about Osun State, where Osun police have paraded 25 suspects for cultism, armed robbery, and political thuggery. Among them is a Saheed Karim linked to the killing of a 14-year-old. He denied the allegation. The police commissioner promised to tackle criminality in the state, but Governor Adeleke has accused the commissioner of deliberate inaction. He says he has sent reports to the Inspector General and the presidency. The governor also named APC leaders, accusing them of breeding thugs. He is demanding an immediate reshuffle of the police command.
The command is fully aware of the recent core-related killings and acts of thuggery threatening the peace of the state, some of which have been given political undertones. Through intensified operations, the command has arrested several suspects linked to those crimes and remains committed to ensuring the safety and security of all residents. I further assure law-abiding residents of Osun State that the command under my watch will continue to prioritize their safety and at the same time seeking for more support and cooperation, while I promise to remain professional, neutral, and non-partisan in discharge of my constitutional responsibility.
Our political disagreement, the Accord Party, they carry all their talks, they come and fight us in the local government. That is how we started fighting. And I went to one of the talk that is in the Lobu. The name of the talk is Asif Abela, aka Abela. I carry his gun. As I carry his gun, we started drag the gun between ourselves. That's how the two parties, they say I should give him his gun. That's why we left that place on that Friday. But I don't know anything about what happened on Sunday because we are not used to go to work on Sunday.
Police parades is definitely, this pre-trial parades is one of our unconstitutional behaviors that it seems that we cannot quit, because Section 36(5) of the Constitution means that you're innocent before guilt. You're innocent until proven guilty, rather. And this performance of productivity, rather than us actually getting convictions, we, parade, and it's sort of a performance of the police showing that they're being productive after continuous complaints from the governor that they are not being productive, that security is a situation. Of course, Osun State elections are coming up in August, but this, I always we always have to look at this, especially if we're talking about arresting people for political thuggery. This is, of course, in the lead up to these elections coming up in August. I think we need to go back to constitutional practices. And I think, when we're looking at state police especially, and this idea of, we're going to discuss this later, but the idea of what are lawful orders, what's the Commissioner of Police's relationship going to be with the governor? Because if the governor and the commission is asking for a reshuffling of the police, of the command within his state, he's saying that obviously that there is some type of crisis. But I think, we have to, I'm not entirely sure I can commend the police for doing a pre-trial parade again, because again, it is unconstitutional. The Police Act of 2020 tried to also abolish the practice, but it seems we're going to continue to see these things. Of these 25 faces that have been paraded, how many are actually going to be convicted of the crimes?
I mean, absolutely, Adesua. What is happening in the development in Osun State is not looking quite good at all, given the fact that the governorship election is coming up next month. And what we've been hearing is that Osun is not Ekiti State. We saw what happened in Ekiti, quite peaceful. The governor was returned with a resounding victory. It won't be like that in Osun in terms of the fact that there is a strong opposition, to the sitting governor, Adeleke, Jackson Ademola Adeleke, who has moved from PDP to Accord Party. And of course, we know that the formidable opponent is coming from the ruling party at the national, which is APC. And so we have seen tension, risen quite badly in the last few weeks. So much so that even the governor and a few in the opposition have traded words. Why this is getting dangerous is the allegation that the governor is mounting, saying that the police commissioner is basically kowtowing to the ruling party in Abuja, and that he doesn't listen to him, and that deliberately, when there are issues, the police command will step back just to ensure that things, go awry. That is his own allegation. Of course, the police commissioner said that, look, we are dealing with it. If we are not dealing with the issues, we won't have 25 people. And not all the 25 paraded are necessarily political thugs, according to the police commissioner. Some of them are into cultism. Some of them are just basic petty, criminals. But what this shows, basically, is that Osun is not looking good. And we can't afford to have a state that will pull the country backwards at a time that everybody is dealing with the issue of insecurity, at a time that everybody is discussing how can state police, as an intervention, assist government in ensuring that security returns. So we will just have to urge the police to say, give us an example. Let's see that you can get it right, so that people who have their hopes in state police will say, okay, maybe the allegations that governors will pocket the commissioners of police is unfounded. But from what we are seeing in Osun, it's not looking too good. And we will need to work on it before the elections next month. Kachi.
That's very valid. I mean, just what you said about Ekiti State, that is even my biggest concern. Are we about to see the exact same thing? What I also find really interesting is, why is Governor Adeleke has continuously complained about his CP. He has continuously said on several occasions, he said the exact same thing just a couple of weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, where he spoke about the fact that this man does not listen to him, that he doesn't listen to him, that he does not take anything he says serious, that he does not take it into consideration, and he does not act on it. And I'm thinking to myself, why is this even a conversation in the first place? Now, based on the new system, with the reviews going on within the state police system, I know that the state governors would eventually be in charge of appointing their own commissioners of police. But right now, it is something that the Inspector General of Police has obviously done. And that is why the governor keeps on reaching out or calling for an intervention from the Inspector General of Police. But I find it incredibly embarrassing that a state governor, who is the chief security officer of a state, continuously complains about the commissioner of police, as though he has no power and is completely helpless as to what to do about him. You know, this is someone that is supposed to basically be the action arm in terms of protecting the lives and property of the people of your state. If there isn't any form of coherence or collaboration between the governor and the commissioner of police, I don't understand how any of this is going to work. And you said it beautifully, you know, the parade of these suspects and then, okay, you paraded these suspects, highlighted the issues around organized crime and the likes in the state, and then. It doesn't take away from the fact that at the end of the day, if we finish doing all of this and it looks really great on TV, if there are not fundamental changes, which first of all begins by listening to your governor, nothing at all will be gone. I am looking forward to the elections in August, and I want to believe that they will be free and fair. The feedback and the review of the Ekiti state election was incredibly poor and embarrassing, and I wonder if there's been any follow-up, you know, to some of the incidents of violence that was spoken of, or if it just became another thing that we speak about and then we just ignore. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how these elections is going to go. And I think the fact that Governor Adeleke keeps on hammering on this, he keeps on hammering on this because if the commissioner of police does not listen to the governor, how is the commissioner of police going to ensure a free and fair election? If the commissioner of police, according to the governor, is partisan, how is it going to ensure a fair and fair election in the state? It's just an impending doom that we're just waiting and watching. And we'll see, I guess. Now, let's speak about what else is going on. The Federal Executive Council during the week approved a comprehensive overhaul of the National Youth Service Corps. Now, this marks the first major restructuring of the scheme since it was established in 1973. The reforms aim to reposition the youth scheme into a skills-focused institution. It will be aligned with the federal government's economic agenda. Now, the key change involves the leadership structure. The NYSC will now be headed by a civilian, but the military will continue to provide security for corps members nationwide. The council has also directed the Attorney General and the Youth Ministry to amend the NYSC Act. This will provide legal backing for the approved changes and enable their implementation. You know, I don't think this, you know, I'm waiting to see the bigger picture, but I think, like, you know, moving from the military side to the civilian side, okay, that's great. And, you know, adjusting the laws to make room for these changes. Let's talk about the real issues here. Number one, Alawe is not sufficient. The real issues here is that NYSC corps members have to go through an entire year where not only are they serving, but they may also have to take on second jobs because the allowances that they are being given, it's not remotely sufficient to cater to them within the economy that we currently live in. These are some of the major issues. The amount of time that it takes to service some of these companies that they work for makes it incredibly difficult for them to even get a decent job on the side. There's been a lot of conversations around whether or not NYSC needs to continue, whether it's necessary. I have no issues with NYSC staying. You know, it's seemingly a rite of passage for the average Nigerian youth. You're done with university. For even some Nigerians, it gives you the opportunity to work in certain governmental organizations and gain sufficient experience while you prepare for your next, you know, your next stage in your career. But I think it needs to be made easier for Nigerians, not only to register, but to actually experience the entire process. I also saw that they plan to extend the camp from 2 weeks to 6 weeks. How feasible is that, considering that a lot of people cannot even adequately sit through the entire 2-week scheme? What exactly are they doing? We're in a digital world right now, the entire world. is moving digital. Just in early June, Cannes Lion happened in the south of France. And the major conversations there really spoke about how creators, which really is everybody at this point in time, are moving from just being influencers to profit-making engines for themselves. How are we making sure that we are not just churning out people who are skillful, but people who are aware of the digital and AI age that we are currently in? Are some of these skills going to be skills like baking, maybe frying akara or the likes, or are they going to be digitally influenced? These are the questions. Are we going to teach how people can profit online? I think these are the major issues here. So yeah, that's my own two takes on this whole NYSC scheme reform.
That is what do you think?
Well, you know, let's look at what they're trying to do. So they've moved it from the military to civilian. There is an increase the leadership, right? But the military is still supposed to provide security. The 77,000 naira allowance remains unchanged. 1 year duration remains unchanged. They have increased the orientation stay in the camps from 3 weeks to 6 weeks, and they have said that it's going to be structured and they're going to be technologically driven, risk-sensitive development for their core members, and they will have specialized streams. Some of those specialized streams include the creative economy, include tech and digital skills, include legal skills, public service, financial literacy, agriculture. These things are, you know, the idea behind them is good, but it does not feel as though it is necessarily fit for purpose. It does not feel as though it is fit for purpose. NYSC was started in 1973. The idea of what Gowon did this after the Civil War was for us to have integration across our country, for people from different parts of the country to serve in the area where they're not from, and to help the integration of the country, different cultures. You know, that's how some of our parents learned how to speak different languages that are not their mother tongue, right? Because of NYSC. However, this is a complete change in what it is meant to do. Now NYSC is being seen as a way to try and prepare young adults as they are entering the workforce. However, this does not seem fit for purpose, and especially not in 2026, and especially not if we think about the actual realities of what corpers have to do. NYSC corpers most of our INEC workers are coming from NYSC, right? This insecurity crisis has affected NYSC corpers to the point where in the handbook they were talking about kidnapping and how to try and prevent kidnapping. I think when we look at these grand ideas, sometimes it seems that people can sit in a room and have great and lofty ideas, but what is the reality of putting people in camps that can barely feed, you know, and sustain them for 2 weeks and making them stay there for 6 weeks? There is no young person who has stayed in camp in the last decade who would ever say, you know what we need is more time in camp. There is no single, if you've done camp in the last decade, there is no one who says, you know what I need is more time.
I had another decade to go back to
in 20 years. There is no one who said, what I need is more time in this unsanitary environment, in this chaotic environment. And if we look at some of the skills, because they already have skills training as part of NYSC, I did it, and I can tell you from that if you look at what they have used it for already, I do not know who will say, you know, what we need to do is invest more and expand upon this, because it is not useful.
I mean, I can't agree anymore with you ladies. You know, you've just spoken my mind, and what is, you know, I believe on the minds of many people regarding this what's been touted as yet another reform. I think that people, if we're not careful, people will get reform weary when we throw the word reform, you know, about you know every market day reform everywhere. I concede that after 53 years, of course, it's high time that we looked into reviewing some of the offerings and the issues with the NYSC. I do agree with the committee that was put in place that it should stay. I don't think that, you know, anything is broken other than what people have always been complaining about, you know, in the last few decades. The situation in the camps are not what anybody would want to spend 6 weeks, you know, doing. And of course, the insecurity component of it. I'm not sure if what the committee is proposing, and I do appreciate what they have done, particularly the intellectual component that came from the office of the Special Advisor to the President, you know, on policy coordination, you know, Adiza Bala Usman, working with the Ministry of Education, working with the Ministry of Youth to say, let's take a look at what we have. But I haven't taken a look at it. I haven't listened to people. Are we sure that what you have is implementable in the manner that you are pushing it? Are you sure that when it goes to the National Assembly, which will have to sit on a few aspects of it, it will pass, given the fact that the reasons for which the NYSC scheme came about 53 years ago are still very valid if you want to remain, you know, as a unified, you know, single country. Can issues of insecurity divide us? You can't come at a point and now say, okay, so let youth corpers who come from states that are challenged by insecurity stay there. Don't post other people. How are you going to do that if you're going to rely on algorithm-led, you know, AI-led kind of arrangement, you know, to post people? You are saying all these things as if what has happened in 53 years is a joke. It isn't. And I also don't encourage the idea of you know, denigrating anything military, because the military that runs the thing is not necessarily like it's a military government. It was just convenient at that time, and I do not think that they've done badly. If they have done badly, why will we have NYC, you know, UCOM members assisting INEC in what they are doing all over the country, in spite of the danger? So for me, I think that they should look at these things very closely. I think that the Ministry of Education should be a bit careful so that, you know, it doesn't appear as if, you know, every market day there's something that the Ministry of Education wants to change. You know, we're tired of 633 system. Let's go to 12 straight years. What does it mean? How is that fundamentally different from what we have? How is it what you are proposing fundamentally? And then you are saying that let's change the uniform. And what do you want to replace it with? I see that the Minister of Youth has retracted. You want to change it to Ankara or to Adire? What does that mean? How does that represent the entire country?
That would be cute, though.
It would be cute, right?
It will be nice, though.
It will raise issues that they will not be able to defend, and it will look as if it is because the president is from a particular, you know, ethnic tribe that you want to go that way. Be careful, you know. If you want to tweak it, particularly the khaki thing, you can. You know, I mean, those are not basic, those are, you know, superficial things. But then the fundamental one, let the National Assembly debate them thoroughly so that we're not trying to fix what is not broken, in my opinion. Yeah. All right, we move on. The presidency has denied the existence of a fake agency allocated 1.3 billion naira in the 2026 budget. Presidential spokesman Bayo Onanuga says the agency's Director General is an imposter, adding that Prince Adeniyi Adeyemi allegedly forged his appointment letter. According to Onanuga, Adeyemi operated from the Federal Secretariat in Abuja for over a year. During that time, he hosted meetings with foreigners and even tried to obtain US visas for his staff. Chief of Staff Femi Gbajabiamila alerted security agencies, leading to Adeyemi's arrest in October. Police subsequently raided his office and home, reportedly discovering 34 bank accounts. Adeyemi now faces an 8-count charge, including forgery and impersonation, and is due in court on July the 27th. Okay, so we have possibly the biggest scandal, you know, that Nigeria has seen in 3 years, because we are not dealing with a minister, you know, allegedly committing, you know, fraud or, you know, allegations of corruption, you know, or something like that. We're dealing with something that affects the very heart of where the power resides in Nigeria. And then it looks to me like we just want to reduce it to an impostor and a con man who just managed to, you know, waffle his way through and almost, you know, hoodwink everybody. I don't think that that is what is happening. I think that this thing should be used as an example of why Nigeria should not allow certain things to continue. If there's an allegation against a top member of the government, I think that it is important for that top member, you know, top government functionary, the chief of staff in this instance, and everybody around him to be seen to be desperate to want to clear his name and not just to say, we don't know this guy, he's an imposter. He has made allegations. How did he manage in more than 1 year, in the seat of power in Abuja to get an office? I remember the other time, I think it was in 2020, when Madam Abike Dabiri, tried to get an office for a Diaspora Commission in another ministry, and now she was booted out. It is not the easiest of things for a new agency to get an office. I know of a few other agencies that their director generals are running from pillar to post trying to get an office. But here we have this gentleman. Nobody knows anything of substance about him. From nowhere, just came out and says that he's the director general of an agency, budget line approved, at least, on paper, got an office, got a letter from the office of the head of service to recruit, a waiver to recruit more than 300 people. These things speak to the fact that there's a mess somewhere that we need to fix. And if we're talking about getting investors, getting this and that, how are we encouraging them when they say, so if we go to Nigeria, who are we speaking to? How do we know that is the real agency or is the fake one? I think that the government of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu should use this sad development to correct a number of anomalies that are staring us in the face in his government. And I don't think that it will do his administration any good if he tries to protect anybody that is ultimately found guilty.
What we have seen here is that, on one hand, I have been told both by the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, and a spokesman to the President, Bayo Onanuga, that this Adeyemi is a fraud and that the agency is a fraud. But what their denial has done is converted every unexplained fact into a liability for the Tinubu administration, because we're supposed to believe that this man defrauded the Central Bank of Nigeria because he was able to open accounts, according to them as well, that he defrauded the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, that he defrauded the head of service, that he defrauded the secretariat where he had his office. And this is another thing that we must also talk about, the ridiculousness of an agency having 314 staff. That's like nearly all the football players in the World Cup right now. 314 staff for a nondescript agency that no one has ever heard about. This is not even a ministry, a small agency. That just shows you the bloatedness of our civil service and our government. We used to talk about the Orosai report. Now it's as if it's like a bad word. We no longer speak about it. It should draw attention back to it, because the ridiculousness of having duplicate agencies, of having hundreds of staff being hired for no reason. And as you said, this has a budget line item, so we're supposed to believe that this man also defrauded the budget office of the Federation. But even if we take that aside and put aside his fraud, this agency is in our budget. It is in the Appropriation Act for 2026, and it is in the budget after we are told that from this Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, saying that he was a whistleblower, that this agency was fake or this man was defrauding the government in October. Months after, the president came to the National Assembly and laid down a budget with the same agency in that budget.
The fellow returned to his office.
So are we supposed to believe that not only is he continuing his fraud and his deceit, but also that the president laid down a budget, and the Chief of Staff to the President knew that in that budget was an agency that is not created by law, and they appropriated 1.3 billion naira into that agency. That they estimated what the capital expenditure would be, what the recurrent expenditure would be, what the overhead and the salaries and the newspaper allowance and the
offices to be created in 36 states
and the president
and abroad.
And the president laid down a budget in the National Assembly, including an agency an appropriated money for an agency that did not exist by law, and that the National Assembly then approved it, did their own appropriation committees for the Senate, appropriation committee for the House of Representatives, the whole body then did the oversight function for that budget and approved it. what they have done is implicated the government to an extreme degree.
Sadly so.
They have implicated the government to an extreme degree that the CBN is able to be so manipulated that they would open accounts for a government agency. It is not simply one man's fraud. We're talking about systematic failure here.
It is deeper than what we're being told.
Yes.
And that is why an investigation, a thorough investigation,
and an independent investigation is also needed on this man's claim
I'm sure
that
Kachi has a word or two.
he bought that he bought his seat
You're
for
boiling to
400
say
million naira.
See, twice you
As
said
in,
that.
I'm like, because this is the problem. Just because I do believe that, you know, the morning show has a lot of, you know, our leaders, they're watching. Just in case you missed the top of the show, let me remind you some of what we spoke about today. Before we get into this conversation, right? We spoke about the fact that Nigerian doctors want to go on strike. They are tired because you need to pay them their money, right? We spoke about the allowance for NYSC core members. Well, that's tautology, but basically NYSC, people within the NYSC space, right? National Youth Service core members.
That's
we spoke about, that's two. Amongst other issues that pertain to insecurity.
Security and police in Osun State, that's three.
And police in Osun State, Governor Adekunle says he's tired. He's saying that his commissioner is not listening to what he's saying. And the election is in August, so he's warning us ahead of time. Now let's get to this conversation and let's put it in context. This budget, pages 50 and 51, you can go and check it, is right there. A total allocation of 1 billion with a B, 302 million, 978,784 naira. Do you know how much social investment we can do with that? For context, social investment means that if we invest this money into the country, we use it to build infrastructures that can generate jobs for people. Do you know how many people will go out of the unemployment bracket? But that's not all. What was this money now supposedly being used for? 803 billion naira allocated for personnel costs. Personnel costs, 803 billion, 200 million naira for overheads, and 300 million for capital projects. Let's not talk about the fact that personnel costs cost more than the capital projects. Let's not go into that. I don't even want to go into that angle. Let's go somewhere else. Okay, so this man has defrauded all of us. He has done something very terrible, but where did he come from? Did he just appear? Because he didn't just wake up one morning and go into an office and sit down there. He had a budget. He had an agency. He was empowered by who? Who was he empowered by? When we say that, okay, yes, you know, this is a fake agency, investigations, and the discovery that this man forged documents and opened bank accounts, all, I think 32, if I'm not mistaken, that's what we read, all 32 of them under fictitious agencies. That's terrible. But where did he come from? I think that's an important fact that we are ignoring seriously. We need to understand how this actually made it into the Approved Appropriation Act, how this budget even exists in those pages. That is the big question. All of these pictures that are being taken, these people existed under someone. Who is that person? And I think that if we go again and we ignore this, and we just allow this become another one of those situations where we talk about it and we get angry and we say, how could you do this? And then in a couple of weeks, we're talking about something else because it just gets swept under the rug. Adeyemi becomes a scapegoat. I think it just shows how incredibly wicked of a system we are living in. And that is scary.
It is very indeed. Do we have more time for the last story before we go quickly? Okay, all right. Very quickly. Adesua, is that yours?
Well, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has opened his remarks at the Presidential Press Corps dinner on Thursday with a greeting that immediately went viral. He welcomed guests and then turned to his wife with a grin, calling First Lady Senator Oluremi Tinubu Iya Alakara, meaning Mama Akara seller. Now, the president clearly decided that the best response to the Akara controversy was humor, but Nigerians online are divided. Some find it charming and relatable. Others say the joke lands differently when millions are genuinely struggling to put food on the table.
Good evening, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. My dear wife, the First Lady, Iya Alakara.
All right, that's an interesting one. Did you get to hear the Yalakara part there? Because everybody has seen it. Do you know the song, you know, the inspiration for what the president said?
What was that?
The Yoruba folkloric Yalakara song. Do you know it?
No.
Okay. Yalakara unta son si mi.
What does it mean?
It's about, you know, the position of the Akara seller, a woman in those days who was a darling, you know, to students and to many people, and was always, you know, going about, you know, dutiful, you know, doing his job. And the idea was who beckoned on a Yalakara without actually meaning to purchase anything, you know, who did that in error. And so the president using that as a banter, for me, that was awesome. Is it Ola of Lagos or somebody, you know, like that who says, you will love it, you know, on social media? You know that I love what the president did. Some other people might think that, you know, in all that we're talking about, this is how you address the point. I think that banters have a way of showing that I know what is going on and that I am attentive. And that when issues are this hot, there is a way that you can use humor to express the fact that I've listened to you, but I also have the, you know, the responsibility to show support to my wife, because I believe in the message that she was trying to pass, which many people didn't quite understand. That's my understanding of what he has done, and I don't think it, you know, if at the end of the day, whether they have just one more year to go or another 4 or 5, you know, more years, it sticks that Mr. Oluremi Tinubu will become Yalakara and the president will become Baba Lagbado. I don't see anything strange. Oh yeah, I'm saying no, but his core supporters already say Baba Lagbado loves Yalakara. That's cool. That's cute, you know, without us neglecting on the core issues on the ground, and there are plenty. Okay. And there are plenty. And my point is that the president has shown that he knows what is going on. There was a time that he says, I've abandoned social media. But then all the Akara and Kuli Kuli narrative came, you know, through the media. And he's saying that I listened.
I see it very differently from you do. And I see it differently because the First Lady doubled down on her statements this week, and she said, you know, it's not only Akara sellers, it's tomato sellers, it's Kuli Kuli. And I think we have to take it into...
and everything.
Yes, and we have to take this into consideration that handouts are not empowerment, especially when it's coming from taxpayer-funded money, especially when it's coming in a time where 30 million additional Nigerians have fallen into poverty. Of the 30 million Nigerians are at risk of acute hunger. If we're looking at that in the context of that, it is not a light-hearted joke. It's not a light-hearted conversation. It is not for the First Lady to double down on her statements. Because for me, it shows a lack of emotional awareness about the situation on ground. I do not think it is light-hearted because the First Lady already has doubled down on her statements. And now it looks more like they are laughing at us than they are laughing with us, especially because of the situation on ground. And when we keep talking about the seriousness with which things are handled. For example, when I read Bayo Onanuga's statement about this Adeyemi fraud and the Chief of Staff, Mr. Femi Gbajami-Amila, it did not seem like a statement that was going out to the Nigerian people. It seemed like a missive going out to their political opponents. You are addressing a people, a country. When you are speaking as First Lady, you are addressing a people, a country. When you're speaking as the President, you are addressing a people and a country. And you must be emotionally intelligent enough to understand what those people and that country is going through. Like Kachi said, the insecurity, the doctors that are about to go on strike, that they have not been paid for 19 months, whereas the presidential jet has been fueled for every single one of those months. We are speaking in that context.
We can take a shower and think at the same time.
I do not believe you can do that if you are the leader. You should know where the shoe is biting us.
We can say that.
Yes.
You cannot say that.
If your jet is being fueled...
What can you not say?
No, let her finish. Are you
Yeah, no. I just think if for 19 months allowances are not being paid to doctors, resident doctors, and in those 19 months, billions are being paid for the presidential air fleet, we must ask what type of country we are running. That billions are being even sent to fictitious agencies, according to them, then we must ask what type of country are we running.
You see, I find it again very, very just shocking that it's not up to 10 minutes, like maybe 2 minutes ago, we just spoke about 1.3 billion that was in the Approved Appropriation Act, that was allocated to an agency that we are now being told does not exist. It just fell from the sky. And in the same breath, we're now talking about the mother of the nation telling us, because again, I am a Nigerian person. I am Nigerian. So she was telling us that, see, to start an akara business does not cost a lot of money. Who exactly is she saying that to? We can only say that because we understand that Nigerians have been completely impoverished. There is no intention to take Nigerians out of that impoverished state. Even though we have the taxes paid by Nigerians that should be catered to, that should be taken to improving social welfare, social investment, so that it can create jobs, that can produce more Nigerians, that can be entrepreneurs and business owners and actually pay more taxes. We're not having that conversation. Instead, we're telling them to set up an akara business, a small business. And again, I ask, who exactly was she talking to? Making this joke on this platform, again, I just ask myself, are we a joke to the political class of this country? And Nigerian entrepreneurs, Nigerian youths, Nigerians in schools right now that are studying to come and join the same workforce that everybody is struggling in, are we a joke? It's not funny. What I was saying earlier, Steve, was that if I make that joke to my colleagues, if I say, guys, listen, it's like we should start an akara business. Let's make it tech friendly. You know, we're having a conversation amongst ourselves. It's understandable. But you cannot say that on the platform of the First Lady of a nation like Nigeria. It's not funny.
But of course she can.
Why can't she?
Because she was addressing the level of people who need that sort of business.
Why do they need it?
And there are plenty.
Why do they need it?
It's
Why don't they need it?
It's weaponization of poverty. Why do they need it?
We need structural change, not handouts. Because people are going to keep being reliant on handouts.
I don't think we should speak down, talk down on small businesses.